So what we have to remember is that, yes, we want to provide calming sensory input at bedtime, but we have to meet the child's sensory threshold first. If their threshold isn't met, if they haven't gotten the sensory input that their body and their brain need, then the calming input will not be effective.
Yeah, I think so often the first thought when a child starts bouncing off the walls at bedtime is, oh, we need to calm down. Let's sit down. Let's read our books. Let's lower the lights. Let's be really calm. You know, whatever that looks like in your house. But realistically, we have to think, are they trying to reach that threshold? Is that why they're acting this way? Let's give them that high intensity input in more of an organized way through an obstacle course. We'll talk about some more strategies down the line, but rather than just initially jumping to that calming activity, try to lean into what their body is telling you and first do some high intensity work and then do the calming activities.
Yes.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica, and this is All Things Sensory by Harkla.
We are both certified occupational therapy assistants, and together with Harkla, we are on a mission to empower parents, therapists, and educators to help raise confident and strong children of all abilities.
On this podcast, we chat about all things sensory, diving into special needs, occupational therapy, parenting, self-care, overall health and wellness, and so much more.
We are here to provide raw, honest, and fun strategies, ideas, and information for parents, therapists, and educators, as well as other professionals to implement into daily life.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey there, welcome to All Things Sensory. We're so happy to have you. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica. And today we're going to answer a common question that we receive from parents. And the question is, why is my kid bouncing off the walls, can't settle down for sleep? And what do I do about it?
Honestly, this is a question that I have myself now that I'm a parent of two toddlers.
My kid has definitely gone through this as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Does Logan still bounce off the walls before bed? No. Okay.
He's a preteen now, so he just wants to sleep all the time.
Okay. He's a preteen.
It's the weirdest thing.
Okay. Well, Jessica has gone through this, so she's the one who's going to share all of her wisdom.
Man. I am working with some clients right now who are struggling with this as well, with their toddlers.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Yeah.
I think this is definitely a toddler thing that occurs frequently, younger elementary school ages. And then for any like older children who are maybe sensory seekers, SPD, they might struggle with this as well.
Yeah.
So really, if you're a parent or a therapist working with clients and your child is like wound up at bedtime, why?
I mean, they could possibly be doing one of two things, if not more. Trying to stay awake. They could be so overly tired, they are literally just clinging on to anything that will give them energy to stay awake so they don't fall asleep on the couch because, they'll get FOMO for sure. Or they have some sensory things that they're working through and they are trying to meet a sensory need that maybe wasn't met during the day, or they are trying to regulate before they go to bed. This in turn, whatever option A or option B, it looks like they are bouncing off the walls before bed. And this is a common thing that occurs in my household right now.
Yep. Especially with two toddlers.
Two toddlers. We want more. We want to wrestle. We want to run. We want to jump. We want to kick. We want to sing. We want to do all the things. So what are we going to do to help them?
Yeah, let's talk about it from a sensory aspect. So let's talk about maybe their sensory threshold hasn't been met during the day. And now that it's almost time to go to sleep, their body and their brain are like, wait, I need more input. I'm not ready. I'm not regulated because my threshold hasn't been met yet.
Exactly. And then maybe if they had school all day, they didn't get enough time at recess. Maybe recess was canceled because of the weather. Maybe they don't get recess anymore. Maybe they just were sitting too long during the day. They didn't ever go outside and see the sunlight, get that natural input. And their bodies are like, whoa, I am very dysregulated.
The other one I think about too is travel. You know, if you're on an airplane ride or if you've been on a road trip and your child has been required to, you know, remain stationary, seated for the majority of the time, then they haven't been able to meet their sensory needs.
No.
You already talked about school. You know, if they just, because the day was long and you guys were running a lot of errands, so maybe they were in the car a lot of the time throughout the day, and maybe they were on screens a lot today because you know, you as the parent have been burned out, and so you're just like, watch TV, it's fine. And really just identifying, okay, this was our day today. My child didn't get a lot of sensory input. They didn't get a lot of movement, so that's why they're bouncing off the walls. The other thing is maybe they have a really high sensory threshold. Maybe they're a sensory craver and they actually do need more input than their peers or their siblings in order to feel regulated because they're a true sensory craver.
Yeah. And sometimes with those sensory cravers, it's nearly impossible to meet that high sensory threshold.
It can be very difficult.
It can be so hard to meet that, especially if they are in school all day, especially if they're on screens or in the car, or, you know, if they're not getting those consistent high intensity sensory breaks. It can be really difficult to meet that. And especially at the end of the day, I feel like those really true sensory cravers are the ones who are literally bouncing off the walls. And you're like, why are you on the ceiling right now?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Honestly.
It is, yeah.
They're like climbing the door frames, you know, like Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. My kids aren't there yet, thank
No,
goodness.
they're not big enough to climb the door frames.
No.
So what we have to remember is that, yes, we want to provide calming sensory input at bedtime, but we have to meet the child's sensory threshold first. If their threshold isn't met, if they haven't gotten the sensory input that their body and their brain need, then the calming input will not be effective.
Yeah, I think so often the first thought when a child starts bouncing off the walls at bedtime is, oh, we need to calm down. Let's sit down. Let's read our books. Let's lower the lights. Let's be really calm. You know, whatever that looks like in your house. But realistically, we have to think, are they trying to reach that threshold? Is that why they're acting this way? Let's give them that high intensity input in more of an organized way through an obstacle course. We'll talk about some more strategies down the line, but rather than just initially jumping to that calming activity, try to lean into what their body is telling you and first do some high intensity work and then do the calming activities.
Yeah. Really quick, we want to let you know about our digital course holiday sale happening right now. You can save 20% on any of our digital courses when you shop now through December 23rd. Go to the link below to start shopping. And if you're an OT practitioner, you can earn continuing education through AOTA when you purchase one of our digital courses. So let's talk about some specific tips and tricks and strategies for bedtime, especially if your child is bouncing off the walls. The first one is no screen time at least 2 hours before bedtime. The light from the screens tells your brain it's time to stay awake. It's time to be awake and alert. It's not time to release melatonin yet, so we're going to stay awake. So if you can cut out all screens, I know football season's here, so it's hard for me.
Yeah.
But at least 2 hours before bedtime, use blue light blocking glasses if you are on the screen, if your child is watching something before bed, because that can help to decrease that blue light that tells the brain it's time to be awake.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to share the raw optics. They have kid versions of the yellow daytime glasses for blue light blocking glasses and then the red nighttime glasses. And if your child can handle that, I would absolutely try something like that because, you know, from what I've heard and read, the traditional like clear lenses aren't really going to block as much of the light as the tinted lenses. So they have some cute little kid versions. They have the adult versions. That's what I use at night if I'm on the screen when I watch my reality TV shows at night.
There's two kinds of people, football, reality TV.
Yeah. So raw optics, we'll link those in the show notes as well. And screen time is going to be helpful to reduce that. And then decreasing the light in the house as well. So if you have a dimmer, if you have lamps, turning those on, changing out your light bulbs. Maybe you want to do a red light bulb. maybe you want to do a blue light bulb instead of the traditional and turn those lights on instead of the overhead lights where they're very bright. Because again, we're trying to get the nervous system to say, hey, it's getting close to bedtime. We should probably go to sleep.
Time to start releasing that melatonin.
Exactly. And, going along with that, I know it's cold now when we're recording this, but if you can go outside before bed, if you can go for an evening walk, the sun's going down, again, the body, the natural circadian rhythm is going to be like, oh, it's getting close to bedtime.
Well, and I was talking about this with a client recently too. It's not bad that it's cold out.
I love that it's cold, but
It's
I'm
actually-
thinking like some parents aren't wanting to go outside because it is cold and it's dark.
But it's so good for you. It's so good for
You
you.
don't have to tell me that. Tell them that.
I'm telling them that. Bundle up if it's cold outside. If it's not cold, great. You don't have to. But what you want to do is try to go outside as the sun is setting, because that cues your brain that, hey, it's starting to get to be nighttime. Let's start releasing melatonin and start getting ready for bed. Plus, going outside is grounding. The other thing I was thinking of was, you know how it's actually better to sleep in a cold room? Going outside before bed when it is cold actually can start that process of your internal temperature starting to heat up, which is a sign of it's time to go to bed.
Time to go to bed.
Yep.
We actually have like a pre-bedtime routine. So we've got like the normal bedtime routine, and then we have the pre-bedtime routine, which
That starts like after dinner?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that consists of going on a walk, playing outside, taking a bath if it's bath night or a shower, and then, having a bedtime snack, then doing our, wrestling and our heavy work and all the blanket swings and all the things. And then it's like, okay, now we're going to calm down. Now we're going to read our stories.
I like that idea of like you have your pre-bedtime routine, which is like starts after dinner, and then you have your bedtime routine with the calming stuff afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. You're basically working on bedtime from like 5 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Gosh, how early do you guys eat dinner?
We don't usually eat that early, but I just feel like, you got to start preparing. It's just
I
like
know.
this mental overload of parenting that we have to work through.
Yeah, but once you get into the habit of it, it's so much easier.
Is it?
Yes. Okay, with one kid, it was easy. Okay, moving on.
Oh, gosh.
So what you want to start doing is incorporating more of those sensory activities, more of those movement activities, vestibular-based activities. What activities does your child seek out? And start using those activities like 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. That's like your pre-bedtime routine is an obstacle course, a sensory circuit, the swings, crawling, climbing, jumping, crashing, wrestling. All of those are like what you need to do before anything that's calming.
Yeah. You can also include, once you've attempted to meet that threshold, then you can include some more of those proprioceptive based activities, the heavy work activities. Jessica mentioned the climbing, the crashing, but you can do them a little bit slower. Like my favorite is the turtle crawl, where you put like a heavy item on their back and they have to crawl slowly around the room without it falling off, or they have to crawl all the way to bed without it falling off. So adding those types of slow, heavy work activities can be really helpful once you've attempted to meet that threshold.
And it won't be perfect every night.
What?
I know. Sorry.
We're expecting perfection from all of you. Just kidding.
The next tip is to use calming music, maybe diffuse some calming essential oils. You can actually start doing this during that pre-bedtime routine if you want. Maybe
During bath time.
During bath time, maybe you've started to dim the lights, you turn on some music, you have the diffuser going, maybe you do a drop with like one of the rollers, and start kind of incorporating those calming sensory strategies into the routine. And then, you mentioned a warm bath.
You're doing bath, and then you can add more input into the bath. Bubble mountain would be great, or just like putting their face in the water and blowing bubbles. That's a lot of heavy work input to the lungs, which is great. And then if your child does struggle with like transitioning out of the bath, If you could warm the towel up beforehand, that would be great.
Warm the towel up and the pajamas in the dryer.
Jammies.
Maybe like a little space heater.
Yep. Don't catch anything on fire. We also, like in our guest bathroom where we take the baths right now, we have 3 lights in there. And so we have 2 of them unscrewed. So it's as dim as possible. But even putting like twinkle lights up in the bathroom or a lamp in the bathroom.
Totally.
What else was I going to say? Oh, music, calming music or essential oils in the bath as well.
Yep. And then you can start getting into the more calming sensory activities. So things like massage, joint compressions, traction, the tortilla roll. Just keep in mind the tortilla roll does include some vestibular input because you're rolling your child up in the blanket to be a tortilla or a taco or burrito. And then
Or a crepe.
Oh, now you're getting hungry. And unrolling them. So just keep in mind that one does include some vestibular input. Rachel mentioned the turtle crawl. Hugs and squeezes, deep pressure, crawling underneath the crash pads and the bean bags, crawling for all of your transitions, just any of those like heavy work, deep pressure activities. You want to use those after you've done all of this like more alerting movement, faster sensory activities.
And you can also add a visual schedule to your evening routine. I've made many of these for my children, whether it's a Velcro, pictures to do done. We have a template that we'll link in the description in the show notes of this one that you can download, whether it is an app that you use, whether it's just like a visual timer of each activity, whatever visual you want to do, you can put your activities on there. We're going to do our heavy work. We're going to do rough house. We're going to play, and then we're going to do the turtle crawl, and then we're going to take our bath, and then we're going to brush our teeth, and then we're going to, that way they can see what's expected. And sometimes when those routine activities or those transitions, they're difficult for you, having that visual can be really beneficial.
If your child does need a bedtime snack, you want to make sure it has minimal amounts of sugar, maybe something that's warm. I was thinking a cold snack might be more alerting.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on the kiddo. I always think of like frozen blueberries or like a banana popsicle or something like that, where I'm like, it's resistive, it's cold, which is generally alerting. So I don't know, play it by ear.
Yeah, try different things, something that's maybe like chewy and resistive. That's going to give them a little bit of proprioceptive input as well.
And then once your child is in bed or once you're in bed with the child, then you can, if you need more input, you could try something like a weighted blanket or a compression sheet or a weighted animal, making sure that your child is safe to use all of those items, generally 3 years and up, making sure that they can get out from underneath them if needed. My son has a weighted dino that he carries with him everywhere.
That's
and
so cute.
That's his pillow. And
I love that.
Yeah, it's nice and calming. And Austin, she has a weighted unicorn, maybe something like that. The weighted things are great.
The weighted stuffed animals.
Yes.
So it is kind of, I feel like it was a lot.
It's a lot, but the sequence should help you with a flow.
The order of operations.
Just know that there's generally a reason why your child is bouncing off the walls, and lean into it and try giving them more of that input in an organized manner. We're not saying just let them run around like crazy kids for 30 minutes before bed. It's more of like, all right, we're going to jump on the trampoline 5 times, and we're going to push this medicine ball around the room, and then we're going to climb the rock wall, or then we're going to climb the stairs, and then we're going to slide, or whatever it is, but it's organized. It's not just a free-for-all. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, especially if you have a sensory craver, you need to make sure it's structured in a certain way, because often with sensory cravers, the more input they get, the more disorganized they get if it is a free-for-all. Bringing it down, doing a certain number of reps or a certain amount of time for sensory activities, incorporate some of the heavy work into it, and then use some of the other tips and strategies we added in here.
Yeah. Okay, that's all we have for you. Check out the show notes or the description and hopefully this is helpful for you. I feel like this is a question that we get asked
all the time.
Like I said, it's my own life's mission to make it through bedtime, pre-bedtime with organized nervous systems. Usually I'm the dysregulated one after all of that.
Yeah, make sure you're doing it with them.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. If you liked this episode, make sure you let us know. Leave a comment, leave us a review. We're on iTunes, we're on video on Spotify, and the All Things Sensory YouTube channel. Share this episode with a friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're happy that you're spending your time with us. If you have specific questions, you can always fill out the form that's listed in the show notes in the description. Send us your questions, and we'll be happy to answer it here on the podcast. But thanks for being here, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to All Things Sensory by Harkla.
If you want more information on anything mentioned in the show, head over to harkla.co/podcast to get the show notes.
If you have any follow-up questions, the best place to ask those is in the comments on the show notes, or message us on our Instagram account, which is at Harkla_family or at All Things Sensory Podcast. If you just search Harkla, you'll find us there.
Like we mentioned before, our podcast listeners get 10% off their first order at Harkla. Whether it's for one of our digital courses or one of our sensory swings, the discount code SENSORY will get you 10% off. That's SENSORY.
Head to harkla.co/sensory to use that discount code right now.
We are so excited to work together to help create confident kids all over the world. While we make every effort to share correct information, we're still learning.
We will double check all of our facts, but realize that medicine is a constantly changing science and art.
One doctor or therapist may have a different way of doing things from another.
We are simply presenting our views and opinions on how to address common sensory challenges, health-related difficulties, and what we have found to be beneficial that will be as evidence-based as possible.
By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or your child.
Consult your child's pediatrician or therapist for any medical issues that he or she may be having.
This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast.
Thanks so much for listening.